Hello everyone, I'm Justin and this is everything you need to know before watching Jurassic World Dominion releasing June 10th. Real quick, if you're watching this video and you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to know anytime we upload a new video. Jurassic World Dominion looks to finally wrap up the Jurassic Park franchise, likely being the 6th and final film. The Jurassic Park and Jurassic World films have been some of the most successful movies of all time, with 3 of the 5 films already released ranking in the top 35 highest grossing films in history. I suggest if you haven't already to go check out the previous 5 Jurassic Park/World films, which will be listed in the description, but if you've already seen them and just want a quick refresher before the new movie, then you've come to the right place. On Isla Nublar in 1993, a crew of InGen employees, an international genetics corporation aiming to recreate distinct animals, attempt to transport a giant metal crate into a secure environment within the company's recently built safari-themed park named Jurassic Park. But when they open the metal crate, the creature inside, which is revealed to be a velociraptor, attacks and kills one of the employees. This leads the worker's family to file a lawsuit against the company, which scares the park's investors. So the CEO of InGen, John Hammond, seeks out help from couple Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ellie Sattler, a paleontologist and paleobotanist respectively, whose dinosaur bone digs he'd been funding, to endorse the park and ensure it's safe to be opened. Hammond, Grant, and Sattler are also joined by the park's investors' lawyer, Donald Gennaro, and Dr. Ian Malcolm, a chaotician. Upon arriving at the park, John begins the tour by first showcasing a Brachiosaurus, before showing them a whole herd of Parasaurolophus, to the shock and amazement of Alan and Ellie.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
The group is then taken to the visitor center where they're shown a video that explains how they were able to recreate the dinosaurs using DNA taken from mosquitoes that had feasted on dinosaur blood before being preserved in amber that was then joined with DNA from frogs to fill in gaps of the genetic code. Next, the group heads to the lab where they watch the birth of a velociraptor. Dr. Henry Wu, a geneticist that takes part in recreating the dinosaurs, explains that they're unable to reproduce in the wild since all the dinosaurs have been engineered to be female. But Ian Malcolm expresses his belief in chaos and concern that life will find a way. During their lunch break, Ian continues to express concern over whether Hammond is responsible enough to be in possession of this kind of science. And Alan and Ellie share Ian's concern, worrying that John may not be able to control the dinosaurs. The only person that actually sides with John is Gennaro, but only because of how much money the park could potentially make. The group is then joined by John's grandchildren, Lex and Tim Murphy, and continue the tour in 2 self-driving electric tour vehicles, while John stays behind in the control room where we meet the chief engineer, Ray Arnold, and are reintroduced to computer programmer Dennis Nedry, who earlier in the film met with Dr. Lewis Dodgson, a rival scientist of InGen working for Biogen. Dennis believed Hammond wasn't paying him enough for his services, so he decided to make a deal with Dodgson to steal dinosaur embryos, and in exchange, Dodgson would give him $1.5 million. Meanwhile, on the tour, the attractions aren't going as planned, with the dinosaurs, a Dilophosaurus, and T-Rex respectively, not appearing during the presentations as they're supposed to. But as the tour continues on, Alan exits the vehicle and finds a sick Triceratops. Ellie takes great interest in the dinosaur's health, and even stays back to take care of it when the group is called to return to the visitor center, due to a tropical cyclone heading towards the island. With most of the park's employees now leaving, Dennis begins his plan, which involves shutting down all of the park's security systems and phone lines to make his heist and exit easier. The electric vehicles are also shut down, and the tour group is stuck in the middle of the park next to the T-Rex presentation. But as they're waiting for assistance, Tim notices ripples in a cup of water and the sound of footsteps in the distance, which turns out to be that of the T-Rex, who tears down the now turned off electric fences. Gennaro runs out of the car into a porta potty as it approaches the vehicles, and it first attacks the car with Tim and Lex inside. Ian and Alan then attempt to distract it with road flares, but Ian leaves the T-Rex on for too long and gets launched into the porta potty, knocking him out and exposing Gennaro, who is then killed by the dinosaur. Meanwhile, Ellie had already made her way back after looking after the Triceratops, and upon learning the security systems are down, she and Robert Muldoon, the park warden, take a vehicle to rescue the others. But when they get there, they only find Ian, still alive but with a broken leg from the T-Rex's attack. Ellie, though, notices footprints from the others, meaning they could still be out there. But before they can start looking for them, Ian notices ripples in a puddle, and not too long after that, the T-Rex reappears and chases after them. But luckily, they're able to outrun it in their car. Throughout all this, Dennis had stolen a few bottles of dinosaur embryos, and began driving through the park to make his exit. But while driving off-road, he gets his car stuck, and as he attempts to get out, he encounters a Dilophosaurus that spits poisonous venom at him. He manages to get back to his Jeep, but just as he thinks he's safe, he realizes that the Dilophosaurus managed to get into the car alongside him, and eventually Dennis is killed. Meanwhile, Alan and the kids manage to get through the night, sleeping in a tree near some Brachiosaurus. As they make their way through the park in the morning, they stumble upon some hatched eggs, prompting Alan to recall how the dinosaur's DNA was joined with frog DNA, and realizes that some West African frogs are known to change sex from male to female in a single second complex environment, confirming Ian's theory that life would find a way. As they continue on their way to the visitor center, they come across a herd of Gallimimus, and Alan is amazed by their uniform direction changes, comparing it to a flock of birds evading a predator. They manage to avoid getting trampled by the herd by hiding behind a log, and learn that the Gallimimus were actually on the run from the T-Rex when it emerges from the forest and kills one of the dinosaurs. Meanwhile, the others are still unable to get through Dennis's code, and so Hammond says to reset the entire system. The reset works in turning the system back on, but Arnold says that he has to reset the circuit breakers manually from the utility shed before they can complete the reboot. So the rest of the group wait in the emergency bunker for him to return, but when he doesn't, Ellie and Muldoon go to the shed themselves to see what's up. On their way there, they notice the electric fences holding the velociraptors have been torn down, so Muldoon tells Ellie to run to the shed herself as he tries to hunt the raptors. She successfully makes it to the shed, and Hammond helps her locate the circuit breaker over the radio. Just when Ellie thinks everything's on the up and up, a raptor appears behind her, and it's revealed Ray was killed by the raptor when his dismembered arm lands on her shoulder. She manages to escape the dinosaur's attack and get outside, but Muldoon isn't so lucky, being mauled and killed by one of the 3 velociraptors. Alan and the kids finally make it back to the visitor center, but while Alan goes outside and reunites with Ellie, the raptors make their way into the building. Alan, Ellie, and the kids go into the control room and successfully reboot the system, which allows them to call Hammond to get them a ride out of there. Just then, the raptors manage to break into the room through the glass, forcing the group to retreat into the air ducts and head back into the lobby. The raptors meet them there and surround them, but before they can attack, the T-Rex shows up and bites into one of them. And this dinosaur brawl allows the group to get outside, where Hammond is waiting for them in a car, and finally admits this may have been a bad idea. The group successfully makes it to a helicopter, and after Hammond gives his dream park one last look, they fly off to safety. 4 years after the disaster on Isla Nublar, Hammond is forced to resign from his position as CEO of InGen following a lawsuit from a wealthy British couple who, along with their daughter Kathy, had gone on vacation to an offshore Costa Rican island, Isla Sorna, 87 miles southwest of Isla Nublar. Turns out, before transporting the dinosaurs to Jurassic Park, InGen bred and nurtured them on Isla Sorna, and after the park was shut down and their equipment on the island was wiped out by a hurricane, the dinosaurs were released to mature in their own separate environment. But the public only learned of this dinosaur society after news broke out that the British couple's daughter had been attacked by a pack of Compsognathus. As a result of the lawsuit and Hammond's resignation, the company is being taken over by Hammond's nephew, Peter Ludlow, who wants to use these dinosaurs to create a new Jurassic Park in San Diego and prevent InGen from going bankrupt. But Hammond disapproves, now seeing the dangers of dinosaurs and humans attempting to coexist, and puts together a team of experts to document the dinosaurs and hopefully gain enough public support to prevent the animals from being put in captivity. This team consists of video documentarian Nick Van Owen, field equipment expert Eddie Carr, paleontologist Dr. Sarah Harding, and a reluctant Ian Malcolm, who only agrees to join after learning Sarah, his girlfriend, had already agreed and made the trip to the island on her own. This rescue mission, as Ian puts it, forces him to cancel plans with his daughter Kelly, creating tension between the two. Still, Ian heads to the island and the group quickly tracks down Sarah, taking photos in the wilderness. Ian tries convincing her to head back home, but she's too excited to learn about real-life dinosaurs. And Ian's problems then get worse when he learns that Kelly stowed away in their RV and traveled with them onto the island. As he's trying to get them off the island, a bunch of InGen helicopters arrive and begin capturing some dinosaurs. InGen's team is led by Roland Tembo, a big game hunter looking to capture a T-Rex with his partner Ajay Sidhu. After capturing several dinosaurs, he and Sidhu discover a Rex nest with an infant inside and capture it in an attempt to lure an adult T-Rex. While they're waiting on a T-Rex to arrive, Ludlow sets up a meeting via satellite video with InGen's board of directors as Ian and his crew spy on them. Nick reveals that Hammond told him Ludlow would be arriving with his team and that he was actually sent to sabotage Ludlow's plan. Sarah joins him in sneaking onto the camp and releasing the dinosaurs, who then destroy InGen's equipment and cause multiple car explosions, including one that gets launched high enough through the air that it nearly hits Tembo and Sidhu sitting in a tree. With the baby T-Rex no longer being watched, Nick frees it and decides to take it back to the trailer after noticing its leg had been broken. Kelly gets freaked out by the baby dinosaur, so Ian and Eddie take her up in the high-hide, a forest dumbwaiter that takes them up above the trees. But while up there, they hear the roar of a T-Rex, so Ian climbs down to warn Sarah and Nick. But just as he gets there, the baby T-Rex's parents show up outside the RV. They try avoiding the dinosaur's attack by returning their baby to them, and it appears to work for a moment, but the dinosaurs decide to attack them anyway, flipping their RV onto its side and pushing the first half of it over the edge of a cliff. The three cling to whatever they can to prevent falling to their death, and once it appears the dinosaurs have left, Eddie shows up and attempts to pull them back over the cliff by tying a rope around a tree trunk and throwing it down to them. But before he can complete his rescue mission, the T-Rexes reappear and kill him by tossing him up and tearing him in half. The other half of the RV then falls down around Sarah, Ian, and Nick, but luckily they all survive, still clinging onto the rope before being helped back to the top of the cliff by Ludlow's InGen team. With all their equipment having been destroyed thanks to Sarah and Nick's sabotage, both groups are now stuck on the island together and are forced to work together to get to a communications center in the middle of the island. The group travels throughout the following day, eventually deciding to stop and rest. But while everyone else is asleep, Ian notices ripples in some puddles, caused of course by the footsteps of the adult T-Rexes that had sniffed out Sarah's jacket covered in the baby Rex's blood. One of Ludlow's men, Carter, wakes up and screams as one of the T-Rexes enters Sarah's tent, alerting the others and causing everyone to go on the run from the dinosaurs. Carter's still the first to be killed during this dino chase, after being stomped on repeatedly by one of the T-Rexes as it chases a group of Ludlow's team into the long grass. But it turns out there's some velociraptors hiding out in there that then snake through the grass and kill each of the hunters. To get to the communication center though, Ian, Sarah, Nick, and Kelly must also go through the grass, but luckily for them, they get through it without a scratch until they fall down a hill and Ian re-injures his leg. While Sarah and Kelly are tending to Ian, Nick heads to the communication center by himself and successfully radios for a rescue. The others eventually make it there as well, but while calling out for Nick, 3 velociraptors show up and attack them. They manage to avoid the raptors for the most part and reunite with Nick before making it to the rescue choppers. But while flying off the island, they see down below that Tembo and Ludlow's team managed to successfully capture the male T-Rex and plan on bringing it back with them to San Diego. Upon returning to San Diego, Ludlow holds a press conference for the arrival of the T-Rex. But something goes wrong with the dinosaur's transportation and the ship carrying it comes crashing into the dock. It's revealed that the ship's crew was somehow killed even though the T-Rex is still locked in the cargo hold. And so a security guard, not aware the T-Rex is inside, unlocks it to look for any survivors, unleashing the T-Rex on San Diego. Ian and Sarah form a plan to lure the T-Rex back into the cargo with its child, which was also taken back to San Diego on a plane and is being kept at the Jurassic Park facility. They eventually do manage to get the T-Rex's attention and successfully lure it back to the dock, before leaving the infant in the cargo hold and jumping off the side of the ship. Ludlow heads down into the cargo to look for the valuable infant, but once he gets down there, the T-Rex shows up and attacks him, before putting him in position to be killed by the baby T-Rex. The dinosaur then looks to head back out on the town, but Sarah puts a stop to that with a tranquilizer dart to the neck as Ian locks it back inside the cargo. The dinosaurs are then taken back to Isla Sorna as reported on the news, and John Hammond pleads in an interview for the island to be preserved and isolated for dinosaurs only. 4 years after the incident in San Diego, we're reintroduced to Alan Grant, shown hanging out with Ellie's son Charlie. It's revealed that Alan and Ellie had broken up at some point after the events at Isla Nublar, and now Ellie has 2 kids with her husband Mark, who works with the State Department. But even though they're no longer in a relationship and now work independently, they still seem to be good friends. Alan now works alongside his young protege Billy Brennan, and the two have made some interesting discoveries about raptors, learning they can actually talk to one another. While at their dig site, Alan and Billy are met by Paul Kirby, who invites them to dinner that evening, claiming it'll be worth their while. At said dinner, we're introduced to Paul's wife Amanda, and the two claim to be wealthy travelers who've gone on every adventure tour imaginable and who want Grant to give them an aerial tour of Isla Sorna, since he has great experience with and knowledge of dinosaurs. Alan is hesitant at first, but after the Kirbys offer to fund his dinosaur digs, he accepts. So the Kirbys, Alan, Billy, and a few of the Kirbys' associates travel above the island in a plane, and Alan begins acting as their tour guide. But it's soon revealed that the Kirbys aren't planning on just an aerial tour and want to land the plane. When Alan tries to stop them, he's knocked out by one of Kirby's men, Cooper, and when he wakes up, he finds Amanda shouting into a megaphone and calling out the names Eric and Ben. This of course draws the attention of a dinosaur, and the group is forced to flee back into the plane as a Spinosaurus approaches them. They begin taking off just as Cooper returns from the forest and attempts to flag them down, but still he ends up getting eaten by the dinosaur, which the plane then clips, sending them crashing into a tree in the forest. As they're trying to find a way out, the Spinosaurus reappears and tears off the front of the plane, allowing it to kill one of the pilots. It then pushes the plane out of the tree into the ground before tearing into its side in an attempt to snatch the humans up. The group takes this opportunity to make their escape, but just as they think they're safe, a T-Rex appears behind them. Luckily for them, the two dinosaurs get into a fight with one another, distracting the creatures long enough to allow the group to run away. And the dino fight ends after the Spinosaurus bites into and snaps the neck of the T-Rex. Now trapped on the island, the Kirbys admit that they aren't actually rich and are just a divorced couple looking for their son Eric and Amanda's boyfriend, Ben Hildebrand, who both went missing 8 weeks ago after going on an illegal boat-towed parasailing tour of the island. Alan, believing the two couldn't have survived those 8 weeks, begins looking for a way to get off the island. But as they're traveling, they come across the parasail Eric and Ben flew in on, as well as a camera containing footage showing Eric at least survived the landing, although Ben is confirmed to have died when they find his corpse strung up while pulling down the parasail. As they continue their travel, they come across some velociraptor eggs, and Billy decides to take a couple of them unbeknownst to the others. This turns out to have been a bad idea though, and after finding an old InGen structure, a raptor shows up and attacks them. They manage to avoid it for the most part and escape by running through a herd of Parasaurolophus and Corythosaurus. But during the chase, Alan becomes separated from the rest of the group and is cornered by a group of raptors that then go to attack him, but are forced to flee after a couple of smoke grenades are thrown, and Alan is rescued by what appears to be a young boy. Turns out the young boy is Eric Kirby, who's impressively managed to survive living on the island for the last 8 weeks in a truck. Alan tells him that his parents are on the island looking for him, so the next morning the two head out and eventually reunite with Eric's parents and Billy. The group then makes their way inside a nearby shed where Alan discovers that Billy had stolen the velociraptor eggs. And while Billy claims he did it with only the best intentions, Alan says some of the worst things imaginable have been done with the best intentions. Instead of getting rid of them though, Alan plans to use them in a potential trade for their lives with the raptors if they come across them again. They then head down some stairs to get to a boat Alan and Eric had seen earlier. But once they get down there, Alan realizes they're in an aviary when a pteranodon appears and scoops up Eric before dropping him in front of its infants to be eaten. Billy, in an attempt to redeem himself, uses the dinosaur paracel they found in the tree earlier to save Eric. He then has Eric drop into the water below to reunite with the others, but when Billy drops down into the water to join them, he's attacked and pecked at by a pair of pteranodons. The rest of the group manages to escape though and get to the boat on which they travel through the day and into the night for a way out, until they hear Paul's phone ringing in the distance. It turns out Paul had lost his phone earlier after leaving it with one of his associates that was eaten by the Spinosaurus. So now when they find his phone, it's in a big pile of dino poop. Still, Alan's able to use its last bit of battery to call Ellie for help, but unfortunately, Ellie's son Charlie ends up answering the phone, and while he tries to get it to his mom, the Spinosaurus reappears and attacks the group. By the time Ellie does get the phone, the dinosaur has destroyed the boat's fuel tank and is on the verge of drowning the heroes who've been chased into the boat's safety cage. But luckily, Alan manages to get out that he needs help on Site B just before the call cuts off. The Spinosaurus then pins the cage underwater, but Paul manages to escape and resurface to distract the dinosaur, giving Alan enough time to find a flare gun in the ocean and resurface to shoot it. The dinosaur is then set on fire thanks to the boat fuel it spilt, so it runs away, and the group makes it back on land. As they make their way to shore though, they're once again surrounded by the raptors, still looking for their eggs, and so they return the eggs to the creatures. The plan actually works with the raptors running off after retrieving them, and the humans are able to get to the beach, where they're met by Navy and Marine helicopters sent by Ellie's husband. Already on one of the helicopters is Billy, who actually survived the pteranodon's attack, so the Kirbys, Alan, and Billy all successfully make their way off the island. 14 years following the events at Isla Sorna, we're introduced to the new home of the dinosaurs, the Jurassic World amusement park, founded by Simon Masrani, son of Sanjay Masrani, who was a close friend of John Hammond's. Simon bought InGen not too long after Hammond's death, and subsequently transferred all the dinosaurs from Isla Sorna back to Isla Nublar, and began construction for Jurassic World, claiming it to be John's dying wish for the park to be built. And from its opening in 2005 to 2015, the park has thrived with no fatal incidents involving the dinosaurs. Visiting the park are brothers Zach and Gray Mitchell, the nephews of the park's operations manager, Claire Deering, who's currently presenting the park's newest attraction to some investors, a genetically modified dinosaur called the Indominus Rex, designed by a returning Dr. Henry Wu, along with a number of InGen scientists. Following her presentation, Claire meets up with the kids at the park's Innovation Center, but she's forced to leave the boys with her assistant Zara soon after, as she has a meeting with Masrani to attend, who during said meeting flies her in his helicopter to the Indominus Rex paddock. Masrani's impressed by the dinosaur, but advises Claire to allow Owen Grady, a former Navy vet currently hired to train and study the behavior of 4 velociraptors, to take a look at the paddock and assure its security. The 4 velociraptors Grady's been working with are Beta Blue, along with Charlie, Delta, and Echo, describing himself as the alpha of the pack. The leader of InGen's security division, Vic Hoskins, believes the raptors have potential to be used as military weapons, and reveals to Grady that they've been looking into it for a while, proclaiming it'll happen with or without him. Claire meets with Grady at his trailer, during which it's revealed that the two had gone on a failed date in the past, but despite there being some tension between the two due to their differing personalities, Grady agrees to examine the paddock containing the I-Rex. But when the two arrive at the pen, it appears the dinosaur had escaped. So Grady and 2 paddock supervisors head inside to investigate claw markings on the wall, while Claire rides back to the control room to find the I-Rex's location. But it turns out the dinosaur is still in the paddock, with it suddenly appearing and killing the 2 supervisors. It chases after Grady, who just barely escapes the paddock, but after getting stuck in the doors for a moment, the I-Rex also escapes its enclosure and kills a worker named Nick hiding behind a vehicle. Grady is able to avoid the creature by masking his scent with gasoline, and after the I-Rex heads off into the forest, Grady goes to the command center as the park's asset containment unit attempt to take down the I-Rex, although Masrani wants to avoid killing it since it would be too expensive to harm. They follow the dinosaur's tracking device, but when arriving at its location, they discover that the dinosaur had torn it out of its own body, before it then appears through the trees, revealing it has the ability to camouflage, and kills most of the unit. Grady tells Claire and Masrani to evacuate the island, but they decide to only close all attractions north of the resort. Throughout this, Zach and Gray had separated from Zara to go on an unsupervised park day, during which they had gone to a Mosasaurus show and eventually ended up at a gyrosphere ride, traveling through the valley. While on the ride, they're ordered to return to the station, but Zach just ignores the warning and takes them past a restricted gate that leads to a forest where they see a herd of Ankylosaurus. Soon the I-Rex arrives and chases after the other dinosaurs, and as the dinosaurs are running, they end up kicking the gyrosphere around, eventually sending the boys into a tree trunk and leaving them hanging upside down to watch the I-Rex snap the neck of one of the dinosaurs before turning its attention to them. It pokes a hole into the ball but struggles struggles to bite into it, giving the boys enough time to escape from the gyrosphere and jump over a waterfall out of the I-Rex's reach. Grady and Claire then arrive at the gyrosphere station and find a group of Apatosauruses being killed while completely uneaten, bringing Grady to the realization that the Indominus Rex is killing for sport. Meanwhile, Zach and Gray make their way to the now abandoned visitor center, where they find a broken down Jeep, and with their experience of fixing their grandpa's old Malibu, they're able to repair the Jeep and drive it back to the park. Grady and Claire show up to the facility just as the boys leave and are soon joined by the I-Rex, who attacks them and chases them back into the forest. While on the run, Claire calls in the I-Rex's location, prompting Masrani to fly over in his helicopter along with 2 officers and attempt to shoot it down. As they shoot at the dinosaur, it runs into and breaks through the wall of the aviary containing a pack of pteranodons and dimorphodons, which then escape and attack the helicopter, killing Masrani's men before sending the chopper crashing to the ground in a huge explosion that kills Masrani. The pterosaurs then head to the northern part of the park just as the boys arrive and attack the park's guests. And Zara is notably killed after getting scooped up and dunked into the Mosasaurus lagoon repeatedly until it appears out of the water and kills her and the pteranodon. Claire and Grady finally make it to the boys, but just then Grady's attacked by a dimorphodon that nearly kills him before Claire knocks it out and tranquilizes it repeatedly. Meanwhile, with Masrani dead, Hoskins and the InGen's private security division have taken control of the park and plan on using the raptors trained by Grady to hunt down the I-Rex. When Grady learns of this, he confronts Hoskins and punches him in the face, but Hoskins proclaims once again that this is going to happen with or without him, so Grady reluctantly agrees to lead a team to hunt down the creature. He rides amongst the raptors through the jungle and eventually finds the Indominus Rex, but it turns out the genetically modified creature is part velociraptor, and it convinces the raptors to turn on the humans. The raptors then attack Grady and the InGen soldiers, with many of the guards being killed, although they do manage to kill Charlie to the dismay of Grady. Upon returning to the genetics lab, the group finds Hoskins getting ready to leave the facility with his team. He reveals that he had manipulated Masrani into creating the Indominus and paid Dr. Henry Wu in exchange for a DNA sample, so he can use its DNA to create another version of it at a fraction of the size to use as a military weapon. But just as he finishes revealing his plans, Delta suddenly shows up and attacks and kills him, before chasing the 4 out of the Innovation Center and cornering them alongside Blue and Echo. Grady slowly approaches Blue in an attempt to reconnect with the raptor, and it actually works, so when the Indominus shows up, the raptors work on the side of the heroes and attack the I-Rex. They prove to be no match for it though, as the I-Rex tosses Blue aside before biting into and tossing Delta and Echo, killing the 2 as a result. Realizing they need to even up the matchup, Claire runs off to a paddock and orders it to be opened, and when opened, it's revealed to contain the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who she leads with a road flare into a fight with the I-Rex. The T-Rex also appears to be no match for the Indominus, but before it can go for the kill, Blue reappears and works together with the T-Rex to fight it off, cornering it in front of the Mosasaurus lagoon, from which the Mosasaurus appears and bites into the I-Rex before dragging it down underwater and killing it. The T-Rex and Blue then seemingly come to a peaceful understanding and decide to go off on their separate ways. The next morning, Gray and Zach reunite with their parents, and Claire and Grady walk off together. While back at Isla Nublar, the T-Rex steps up on the helipad and roars at the now abandoned amusement park. 6 months later, a group of mercenaries are sent to the abandoned park in a chopper to recover the bones of the sunken Indominus Rex. 2 of the mercenaries head into the lagoon in a submarine where they retrieve a rib bone from the I-Rex. And after sending it up to the surface, the group's technician begins closing the lagoon's gate. But before they can get back to the surface themselves, the Mosasaurus appears behind the 2 men and kills them. The technician, still waiting on the gate to close, is then forced to flee when the T-Rex appears. But while running, he drops the device closing the gate, which is then stepped on and crushed by the T-Rex, stopping the gate from closing. And although the technician makes it to the helicopter's rope ladder, he ends up getting killed by the Mosasaurus when it jumps out of the water and eats him alive before escaping from its enclosure into the ocean, as the chopper exits the island as well. 3 years later, we meet back up with Claire, who's now founded the Dinosaur Protection Group. It turns out there's a volcano soon to erupt on Isla Nublar that could lead to complete dinosaur extinction once again. And the controversy prompts Ian Malcolm to return to advise the US government against a rescue operation. Luckily for Claire, she's invited to Lockwood Estate, the residence of Sir Benjamin Lockwood, who it turns out was an old business partner of John Hammond that had worked alongside Hammond to create the first lab where they extracted the first batch of dino DNA. And he agrees to fund a rescue mission and transfer the dinosaurs to a sanctuary island where they can live in peace. With Lockwood having to tend to his current health problems, his assistant Eli Mills takes over the meeting and explains that capturing the dinosaurs will be difficult, specifically Blue, who he believes is the second most intelligent piece of life on the planet. So Claire meets with her now 2-time ex-boyfriend Owen Grady for help, and although he turns her down at first, he eventually agrees after watching videos of himself training a young Blue. Joining Claire and Grady on their trip are 2 members of the Dinosaur Protection Group, paleo-veterinarian Zia Rodriguez and IT expert Franklin Webb, and upon arriving at the island, the 4 are met by Eli's team of mercenaries led by Ken Wheatley. The group then makes their way to a facility containing equipment that allows them to track Blue's location using her chip implant. And Grady, Zia, and Eli's team then head out and eventually find Blue, who Grady manages to reform a bond with for a moment, until she's suddenly tranquilized by Wheatley. An angry Blue then attacks and kills a mercenary, but the mercenary still manages to shoot her down before dying. This prompts Grady to charge towards Wheatley, but Wheatley just tranquilizes him as well and leaves him there to die as the volcano continues to erupt. Although Zia's kept alive since she's the only one that can tend to Blue. The mercenaries then lock Claire and Franklin in the facility and leave them to die as well before making their way off the island. But luckily, Franklin's able to hack into the system and open the door, which unfortunately allows a baryonyx to enter the facility, but they manage to evade its attack and escape through an emergency ladder. They then reunite with Grady, and the three run away from the erupting volcano amongst a dinosaur stampede, eventually finding a gyrosphere that Claire and Franklin hop into and use to roll off the cliff of the island into the water below, while Grady has to run off on foot. The three, surrounded by drowning dinosaurs, manage to swim to the surface and crawl onto the beach, where they watch as Wheatley and the mercenaries prepare to leave the island with multiple captured dinosaurs, including the T-Rex, with Wheatley yanking a tooth out of the Stegosaurus's mouth to add to his collection. As the mercenaries begin to leave on their boat, Claire, Grady, and Franklin manage to drive aboard in a left-behind vehicle, and once they're on the boat, they all watch as the park is destroyed and the original Brachiosaurus seen during Hammond's first tour of the park becomes overwhelmed by the smoke and fire. Claire, Grady, and Franklin eventually reunite with Zia, who's still tending to Blue's gunshot wound. But with it getting increasingly worse, Zia says they're gonna need a blood transfusion ASAP. Unfortunately, the only blood that can work for the operation is that of the T-Rex, but luckily for Claire and Grady, they're able to break into the T-Rex's truck and successfully retrieve the blood before escaping just as the creature wakes up. Meanwhile, at Lockwood Estate, we meet Lockwood's granddaughter, Maisie, who, as we learned during a conversation between her and Lockwood, began living with her grandfather after her mother died in an accident. She ends up overhearing a conversation a bit later between Eli and an auctioneer, Gunnar Eversole, during which it's revealed that Eli plans on selling the dinosaurs in a grand auction. It's also revealed that Eli's had another new dinosaur created called the Indoraptor, using a combination of raptor and Indominus Rex DNA, with Eli having been the one that sent the mercenaries to retrieve the I-Rex rib bone earlier. Maisie tries to tell Lockwood of Eli's plans, but he has a hard time believing her and sends her to bed, so she continues snooping on her own and secretly enters the lab, but she's quickly forced to hide when Eli shows up with Dr. Henry Wu, who's helping create the Indoraptor. Wu expresses frustration with Blue's current condition, claiming they need her in good health for the creation to work, but Eli says he wants it done as soon as possible. Maisie, still attempting to avoid being seen, runs down the stairs and backs away from them into a hallway, but in doing so, she backs right into the caged Indoraptor. Upon seeing the creature, she screams and runs right into Eli's arms, who takes her upstairs and locks her in her room. Lockwood then asks to meet with Eli and confronts him about what Maisie had said, but Eli claims he's just fulfilling his duty of guiding his fortune into the future. An angered Lockwood orders him to call the police and turn himself in, but instead, Eli grabs a pillow and smothers Lockwood to death. Back on the boat, Claire and Grady are split up from Zia and Franklin after Franklin's mistaken as a crew member, so they sneak onto an empty transport truck and follow Wheatley's group to Lockwood Estate, until they're recognized and put in a cell alongside the dinosaurs. A number of auctioneers then arrive, and the auction begins with multiple dinosaurs being sold, including the Indoraptor, which was originally not for sale, but was put on the market after high bids were placed, much to the chagrin of Wu, who knows the prototype is too dangerous to be sold. Throughout this, Grady and Claire are able to break out of their cell with the help of a Stygimoloch in the cell next to them, and eventually meet Maisie, who'd escaped her room and headed into the basement after finding Lockwood dead. As the three look for a way out, they witness the Indoraptor being sold, and Grady, in an attempt to stop the Indoraptor from leaving the estate, finds the Stygimoloch and sends it into an elevator that goes to the auction floor, where the dinosaur begins attacking Eli's mercenaries. Grady enters soon after and takes out a number of them as well, and the chaos forces the auctioneers to flee. But as everyone exits the estate, Wheatley heads back inside to add the Indoraptor's tooth to his collection. But in doing so, he allows himself to be gruesomely killed and for the dinosaur to escape, with it then killing a few attendees hiding in an elevator, including Eversole. In the mansion's basement, Grady, Claire, and Maisie are approached by Eli, who orders them to hand Maisie over, but they refuse. This prompts him to reveal that Maisie isn't an ordinary child and is actually a clone of Lockwood's daughter that he created after her death using he and Hammond's dinosaur cloning technology. Directly following this revelation, the Indoraptor appears and kills Eli's two mercenaries before chasing after Claire, Grady, and Maisie. Meanwhile, Zia, who had been handcuffed to Blue's cage, is approached by Wu, who orders her to give him a sample of Blue's blood, but she reveals that she'd given Blue a transfusion earlier, so her blood is no longer pure. Zia's then freed when Franklin, still undercover as a crew member, sneaks up behind Wu and incapacitates him before letting Blue out of her cage to save them from the approaching mercenaries. But as they they escape, the lab explodes and causes hydrogen cyanide to leak. Claire, Grady, and Maisie, meanwhile, are still being hunted down by the Indoraptor, and once they're spotted, the creature attacks them. The attack injures Claire's leg and takes out Grady, but Maisie manages to escape into her bedroom, although the Indoraptor enters soon after by climbing onto the roof of the mansion and through her window. But as it approaches her, Grady returns and shoots it with a rifle until he runs out of ammo and is saved by Blue, whose brawl with the creature allows Maisie and Grady to escape through the window into the glass roof of the mansion's display room. After getting the upper hand, the Indoraptor climbs onto the roof alongside them, but Blue returns once again to save the day and sends itself and the creature falling through the glass roof and down onto a dinosaur skull that impales and kills the Indoraptor. Grady, Maisie, Claire, Zia, and Franklin then all reunite and find the caged dinosaurs as the hydrogen cyanide continues to leak into their cell block. They debate whether or not they should release the dinosaurs, and eventually Claire decides not to and watches as the creatures become overwhelmed by the poison. But suddenly the doors are opened by Maisie.
I had to. They're alive. Like me.
A stampede of dinosaurs then exits the mansion just before Eli is able to escape, and he's subsequently killed by a T-Rex and Carnotaurus. Grady and the group are then met by Blue, who he reconnects with and instructs to accompany him. But Blue instead decides to once again run off freely into the wilderness along with the rest of the dinosaurs. And now, thanks to Hammond and Lockwood's original technology getting into the wrong hands, humans must find a way to coexist and survive alongside these creatures.
Welcome to Jurassic World.
And that was everything you need to know before watching Jurassic World Dominion. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and be on the lookout for more Jurassic World content following the release of the new movie. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.